Ethiopia is one of the oldest nations in Africa, and its culture emerged over a long period of time. It expanded to encompass numerous other predominantly Afro-Asiatic-speaking communities as a result of migration and imperial expansion, including Amhara, Oromos, Somalis, Tigray, Afars, Sidama, Gurage, Agaw, and Harari, among others. Ancient Greek historians like Herodotus and Diodorus Siculus used the term Ethiopia to describe the peoples who resided immediately to the south of ancient Egypt, specifically the region now known as the ancient Kingdom of Kush, which is a part of modern-day Nubia in Egypt and Sudan, as well as all of Sub-Saharan Africa in general. The Queen of Sheba allegedly had a relationship with King Solomon and gave birth to a son named Ebn Melek, according to the Ethiopian legend, which is best illustrated in the Kebra Nagast. If you're still watching this video, it means you love it. Please take a second to hit the like button, as it enables our content reach more people. The Kingdom of Dempt, which came to power approximately 980 BC, is the first kingdom in Ethiopia for which records are available. Its capital was Yeha, where a temple in the Sabaean style was constructed approximately 700 BC. It is unknown just how much the Sabaeans in Yemen impacted the Dempt dynasty. While it was once thought that Dempt was a Sabaean colony, it is now thought that Sabaean influence was minor, restricted to a few locations, and vanished after a few decades or a century, possibly signifying a military or trading colony in some kind of alliance or symbiosis with the civilization of Dempt or another proto-Axumite state. In the 1st century CE, the Kingdom of Axum was the first confirmed great power to emerge in Ethiopia. Axum's ascent to prominence in the 1st century CE marks the emergence of the first documented great power in Ethiopia. It was able to unify the northern Ethiopian highlands starting around the 1st century BCE. It was one of the successor kingdoms to Dempt. The Ethiopian plateau's northern highlands served as their bases, and they later spread southward from there. One of the 4 major powers of his era was Axum, according to the Persian religious philosopher Mani, who also identified Rome and Persia as other major players. Frumentius, who was appointed the first bishop of Ethiopia by Saint Athanasius of Alexandria in the early 330s CE, is credited for bringing Christianity to the region. Ezana was converted by Frumentius, and he left behind a number of inscriptions describing his rule both before and after his conversion. According to an inscription from Axum, he defeated the Bogos people and returned to praise his father, the deity Mars, for the victory. Ezana's coins, which changed from having a disc and crescent to having a cross, reflect her developing adherence to Christianity, as evidenced by later inscriptions. Although there is evidence that the Kingdom of Kush at Meroe in Sudan was experiencing a period of decline before to Ezana's expeditions there, the kingdom may have been destroyed as a result of those expeditions. In the 6th century CE, the Axumite kingdom is once more mentioned as ruling most or all of Yemen. When the Jewish king Nuwas assumed power in Yemen around 523 CE, he declared that he would slaughter all Christians and assaulted an Axumite camp at Zafar, setting fire to the churches in the process. He then launched an attack on the Nadran Christian stronghold, killing any Christians who refused to convert. The next dynasty in Ethiopia was the Zagwe dynasty precursor to the Solomonic dynasty. The main provinces of the Solomonic dynasty were Tigray, Amhara, and Shua. The capital, or rather the seat of overlordship, had typically been in Amhara or Shua, whose Ngasanagas king demanded tribute from the other provinces when he could. The claim that they were descended directly from Solomon and the Queen of Sheba was a major factor in how they came to be known as Ngasanagas, but it goes without saying that in many, if not most, instances, their success was more a result of the might of their armies than the chastity of their ancestry. Ethiopia expanded its empire and engaged in military reforms during the early Solomonic dynasty, controlling the Horn of Africa especially under the administration of Amdasian I, as the Solomonic monarchs didn't have a fixed capital, but instead traveled the empire in mobile camps. There was also significant artistic and literary growth during this time, but there was also a drop in urbanization. Away from the Dark Ages and into modern times, we find Emperor Tewodros. His relative Djazmak Kinfu, who may have been his uncle according to historical records, was in charge of the provinces of Dembia, Quora, and Chelgab between Lake Tana and the northwest frontier. His father was a minor local leader. Kassa was a small lad when Kinfu passed away, taking with him his inheritance. After getting a conventional education in a nearby monastery, he left to command a group of robbers who lived a life akin to Robin Hood and roamed the countryside. Because of his achievements, his supporters multiplied until he was in charge of a powerful army. Raz Ali, the governing regent, and his mother, the Empress Menin Libanamid, were aware of him. Kassa was set up to marry Ali's daughter by the Empress in order to tie him to them. He then focused on subduing the nation's three last major divisions, Gojam, Tigray, and Shua, which were still unconquered. However, as his ties to his father-in-law and grandmother-in-law worsened, he quickly turned to violence against them and their vassals, which he was successful in doing. After Tewodros refused to free imprisoned British citizens, the British force seeking Tewodros' surrender arrived on the shore of Massawa in the early months of 1868. The British and Djazmak Kassa formed to an arrangement whereby Kassa would permit the British to pass through Tigray in exchange for cash and weapons. The British were traveling to Magdala, which Tewodros had designated as his capital. As it turned out, the British gave Kassa a gift for his collaboration after they finished their mission and prepared to leave the country: artillery, muskets, rifles, and munitions. Ado Bezabi, a Shuan noble, and Darge, Haile Melekot's brother, assumed care of the young prince. But after a difficult battle with Angeda, the Shuans were forced to submit. The Emperor Tewodros received Saul Miriam, who was then brought to Gondar. He received training there for Tewodros' service, before being held in comfort at the Magdala fortress. Against the opposition of his governors, Tewodros afterwards devoted himself to modernizing and consolidating the legal and administrative system of his realm. Alatash, the daughter of Tewodros II, was married to Saul Miriam of Shua. Ethiopia was never colonized by a European state, but it was taken over by the Italians in 1936. Nevertheless, during the 19th century scramble for Africa, various colonial countries had interests in and plans for Ethiopia. Tewodros II of Ethiopia took offense when Victoria, Queen of the United Kingdom, declined to respond to a letter he had sent her in 1867 and imprisoned several British citizens, including the consul. Sir Robert Napier led an army of 12,000 that was dispatched from Bombay to Ethiopia in order to free the kidnapped nationals. On April 13, 1868, the British assaulted the citadel of Magdala after the Ethiopians had been routed. The Italians arrived at this point. An Italian firm had purchased Aseb, a port near the southern entrance of the Red Sea, from the local sultan in March 1870. After gaining further territory in 1879 and 1880, the Italian government acquired Aseb in 1882. In order to boost the colony's prospects through agreements with Saul Miriam of Shua and the Sultan of Ossa, Count Pietro Antonelli was sent to Shua this year. Emperor Johannes IV was battling the dervishes, who were now in control of the Egyptian Sudan. In 1887, a significant fight took place at Galabat, where the dervishes, led by Zeki Tumul, were defeated. However, after a stray bullet hit the king, the Ethiopians made the decision to disperse. The enemies captured the king's body after his death, which occurred during the night. Saul Miriam of Shua declared himself Emperor Menelik II of Ethiopia after learning of Johannes' death, and won the obedience of Begemder, Gojam, the Yeju Oromo, and eventually Tigray. Lige Iyasu, Menelik II's grandson, took the throne after his death, but quickly lost favor because of his Muslim connections. The Christian nobility overthrew him in 1916, and Menelik's daughter, Zodatu, became emperor. Ras Tafari Makanen, her cousin, was appointed regent and heir apparent. Ras Tafari Makanen, who had taken on the throne name Haile Selassie, was made Emperor Haile Selassie I of Ethiopia following the death of Empress Zodatu in 1930. His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie II, conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, King of Kings of Ethiopia, and elect of God, was the full title of the monarch. The Haile Selassie dictatorship made modernization a top priority, and it started by expanding educational options beyond the quaint little schools run by the Ethiopian Church. In Addis Ababa, Menelik established the first modern school in 1908 and sent several students there. In 1925, Haile Selassie opened the second modern school in the city and sent hundreds of young people to study abroad. In addition to creating cities, training facilities, and technical colleges, he also founded schools. Missionaries were involved in education as well. The reign of Emperor Haile Selassie was halted in 1935 when Ethiopia was invaded and captured by Italian forces. On October 2, 1935, the Italian military invaded Ethiopia under the command of the dictator Benito Mussolini. On May 5, they took over the city of Addis Ababa. The League of Nations was beseeched for assistance by Emperor Haile Selassie in his fight against the Italians. However, on May 9, 1936, the nation was formally annexed, and the emperor fled to exile. During their occupancy, the Italians made investments in Ethiopia's infrastructural development. Between Addis Ababa and Massawa, they built the so-called Imperial Road. Dams and hydropower plants were erected, more than 900 kilometers of railways were rebuilt, and several public and private businesses were founded. A large portion of these upgrades were part of a scheme to settle the Ethiopian plateaus with 500,000 Italians. Italian forces were routed by British and Allied forces in the spring of 1941. Emperor Haile Selassie re-entered Addis Ababa and ascended to the throne on May 5, 1941. Following their surrender at Gondar in November 1941, the Italians waged a guerrilla struggle in Ethiopia that lasted until the summer of 1943. Following Italy's defeat, Ethiopia was briefly under British military rule before complete sovereignty was re-established in 1944. However, some districts remained under British rule for longer periods of time. From 1952 until the start of its fight for independence, Eritrea was an independent region of Ethiopia. Emperor Haile Selassie made a lot of attempts to encourage his country's development following World War II. University College of Addis Ababa, the first significant institution of higher learning in the nation, was established in 1950. The 1955 Constitution, which gave the parliament more authority, superseded the 1930 Constitution. Haile Selassie worked to strengthen the nation's connections with other African countries, while also enhancing diplomatic ties with the United States. He assisted in the creation of the Organization of African Unity in 1963 to accomplish this. Following the breakdown of the Federation and the closure of the Eritrean parliament by the Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie I, the 30-year Eritrean struggle for independence began in 1961. In 1962, the emperor proclaimed Eritrea to be Ethiopia's 14th province. The Negus received flack for spending so much money fighting the nationalist forces. Emperor Haile Selassie's elderly age was becoming obvious by the beginning of the 1970s. Because of long-standing custom, the majority of Ethiopians